Ladies and gentlemen, round 3 of Luther versus Roman Catholics. In 1999, they came together and put out a document called the Joint Declaration on the Doctrine of Justification. It's a fascinating article. In the first 2 videos, we saw Martin Luther come to the table with the small called articles, essentially a list of his doctrines as he read them. And we saw the Roman Catholic Church respond with Pope Paul III calling the Council of Trent, which went over an 18-year period. Now, today we're going to try to wrap it up. If you want to read the document, you can on our website, evangelistnickgarrett.com. It's about a quarter of the way down on the home page, or click on the drop-down tab called Theological Positions, and you'll see it there. Before we jump in, though, there's 2 things I want to remind us about. Number 1, nobody is free from critique. I learned that this week as I tackled subjects like the copious conspiracies about the Emperor Constantine or the whitewashing of history. We had all these side dialogues going on other platforms this week. And it reminds me to tell us this, that whether you're Lutheran or Roman Catholic or whatever denomination you are, if you're expecting to come here and hear a theological pre-commitment to one of these denominations, you haven't been paying attention. We care first and foremost about the truth of Jesus Christ, the truth of the gospel. We don't care what doctrines get us there. We care about the truth. So be prepared to be uncomfortable from time to time. It's nothing personal here. We're trying to use primary sources, and I'm giving you that information, and you can do with it what you will, right? So we speak with respect here, even if we disagree, and that's all cool. Number 2, it dawned on me that we might not all know what the Protestant Reformation is. So I want to give you a brief. What is the Reformation? How do we end up with this joint declaration and the disagreements and the church blowing up and all these? What happened? Well, I'll tell you 5 things that set the stage, and then I'll focus in on the character of Luther and what event made the whole powder keg explode. Number 1 reason for the Protestant Reformation was a period of time from about 1400 to 1520, the Renaissance papacy. It was a period of time where the papacy was particularly corrupt. It had lost its mission of being a spiritual and a secular force, and it really became secular, totally about money and power. If you want to learn more about it, you should read the short book called The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. In it, he discusses the moral dilemmas inherent in what he's seeing in people like Cesare Borgia, the son of Pope Alexander VI, and how they do things and how talented they are, but how sometimes things are used for such devious reasons. It's a good book. Reason number 2 the Protestant Reformation happened was the fall of Constantinople in the middle of the 1400s. At that time, that was the Greek world. So when Constantinople fell, you saw Greek scholars and speakers flood the Western universities. The Bible was originally written in Aramaic and Greek. The West had it in Latin translations from the late 300s, thanks to Jerome. And all of a sudden you have Greek speakers talking with Latin speakers and comparing translations and noticing some things. Number 3, the printing press was evolving during this time. It had been used in China for a large amount of time already, but you start seeing it in such wide use that Bibles are being printed now. People are reading. The exchange of cultural ideas from Constantinople flowing into the West created this melting pot where everybody's reading each other's stuff and they're talking about it. The 4th reason for the lead up to the Reformation was church practices that started out good, but over 500 years became really, really corrupted. Indulgences, for example, started out as a motive to raise money to go restore the Holy Land to Christians, but it becomes this perverted, twisted thing over time. Number 5, the interchange of culture and language proved the Vulgate to be a poor translation. I know what I'm saying there is bold. I'm not making a critique. I'm just stating a historical fact. Those that believe the Vulgate lineage to be fine, good for you. It's great. I have 10 Bibles and I'm constantly comparing them. There's nothing wrong with that statement. Now, that's the stage. The character, Martin Luther, his father wanted him to become a lawyer. But instead, during a storm or something, he was frightened out of his wits and he made a commitment to God. So he joins and he becomes a monk. There's a lot of, traditional narrative. Oh, he had trouble making the sacraments work to cleanse him of his sin. It's all very kitschy. It's probably not an authentic narrative. But what is true is that He was coming up in school during a time that these conversations were taking place in Greek and Latin. He leaves the monastery to get a PhD. He becomes a master of the scriptures, and he truly is a master of the scriptures. He's also a Catholic, right? He was a priest, and he becomes a teacher. So one day he goes to town, and he has written a document that specifically targets 2 or 3 actions of the Renaissance papacy that he hopes will spark a debate among students in the college town that he lived in. And instead, a powder keg went off that literally led to the Protestant Reformation. The work was picked up by political opponents of the time, right? You see, one thing that was happening during this time was the rise of secularism, rise of humanism. There are late examples, but Jean-Jacques Rousseau and John Locke on origins of inequality. These types of ideas, later written in the 16 and 1700s, begin to foment during this time. And the nation-state system that we would recognize during our era was beginning to form. So that's how we ended up at this juncture. Luther, a simple act, nailing this document on the door to a church in Wittenberg and people seeing it. It wasn't a war. It wasn't a huge public declaration. Nothing went viral. It was a small thing that happened. Imagine that. You walk up and you nail some of your ideas on a door, and this happens. I mean, talk about the power of free speech. Anyway, now let's get into the last section of the joint declaration on the doctrine of justification between the Lutherans and the Roman Catholics. The significance and scope of the consensus reached. The understanding of the doctrine of justification set forth in this declaration shows that a consensus in basic truths of the doctrine of justification exists between Lutherans and Catholics. In light of this consensus, the remaining differences of language, theological elaboration, and emphasis in the understanding of justification described in paragraphs 18 to 39 are acceptable. Therefore, the Lutheran and the Catholic explications of justification are in their difference open to one another and do not destroy the consensus regarding the basic truths. We found this to be true. Do you remember last video we looked in the catechism and took note of how interesting it was that the Catholics emphasized the personhood of the Holy Spirit in the actions of justification. And we found that from the Protestant side, yes, this is true, but it's not really emphasized. We talk about Jesus Christ, that person of the Trinity, and penal substitutionary atonement. What's being said here is these things don't contradict each other. One is telling you the truth. One is giving you a lot of facts about the truth without specifically saying the truth. It's an interesting dynamic. Thus, the doctrinal condemnations of the 16th century, insofar as they relate to the doctrine of justification, appear in new light. The teaching of the Lutheran churches presented in this declaration does not fall under the condemnations from the Council of Trent. The condemnations in the Lutheran Confession do not apply to the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church presented in this declaration. They are saying we've got no beef. That is what the consensus here is. We've got no beef with each other. We're good. Our consensus and basic truth of the doctrine of justification must come to influence the life and teaching of our churches. What a great hope they have. So let's see who has continued to do that, right? You can finish reading this on your own, but what we're going to end with is who's in charge and what's next, right? So on the Catholic side, you have the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity. And for decades, they have been going to every other denomination, every other orthodoxy, and saying, hey, can we sit down and look at what differences we have so that we can put them on paper and kind of see where we stand? On the other hand, you have the Lutheran World Federation. Well, who has continued to do this type of work? When you go to the homepage of the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity, they're meeting with other denominations. They're producing position papers inside the institution of the church, which means at any time a pope or a higher up at the Vatican could take interest in this work, pull it up, and look at it and hand it to canon lawyers and see if it does belong in the catechism or not. That's something that could result. When I go to the Lutheran World Federation homepage, I see two things. One, I don't see them meeting with any type of groups to establish doctrinal ideas. I don't see them talking much about their faith at all. What I see is them promoting mainstream UN and pandemic propaganda. I'm telling you the truth. I'd love at the end of this to be, hey, the Lutherans have continued this great project and blah. And maybe they are continuing it. Maybe somewhere in quiet, this group continues to work. But as a layman, when I look at one website and I see the work continuing to take place with all the denominations, and I look at another one and I see the propaganda that the mainstream propagates, I don't know what I'm left with there. I don't know how I am to conclude. It's a very interesting phenomenon. Round 3. Does this look like an Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward fight? You know, these two guys had 3 fights and they just beat the tar out of each other and no one was going down. It was a stalemate. But here at the end, can we say that one of these sides has continued to try to reconcile ideas and doctrines for the betterment of Christianity? And can we say the other side hasn't? I'm going to leave it for you to decide. Go to the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity on Google. Look at their work. Go to the Lutheran World Federation homepage and look at their work, and you make decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a few quick recommendations I want to make and notes of thanks. For those people who are agnostic, atheist, on the fence, or into the more metaphysical, scientific way of trying to understand God, the works of St. Bonaventure, it's from the 1200s, and he has a short essay in here called Journey into the Mind of God. You have to read it. It will help you so much. It will give you something theological to read to try to process your ideas instead of it simply being scientific mumbo-jumbo. Really good. So check it out. I want to thank a Catholic priest friend of mine who loaned me this from their library. I was having a lot of trouble working with my big catechism from the year 2000, and he said, hey, well, you got to use the one from the United States, and so I've been using it, and it's been a big help, so I just want to say thanks for that, and thanks to another priest friend for the recommendation of using it. I think that about ends that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would, please support our work. PayPal's the easiest. You make a tithe, offering, whatever you want to call it, and it comes straight to me. We also have commercial products, cups, mugs, masks, shirts, all that kind of stuff. You can purchase my books at amazon.com/author/Nicholasdgarrett. You can get them for your ebook, your Kindle, your phone, or in paperback. The electronic versions are only a few dollars. Visit our homepage, evangelistnickgarrett.com. One thing I'm working on right now is a tab of our discoveries, unique work that we have found alone in our narrative apologetics projects. I'm looking forward to starting a new project. Over the next few days, I'll make an announcement on what that's going to be. God bless you, my friends. God bless you. And may your work today bear fruit. Talk to you next time.
Just what freedom means, liberty I sing. Is this what freedom means to me? Liberty I sing. Is this what freedom brings? Liberty I sing.